Okay. So what we're going to do today is try to get a general timeline of how from the beginning, from Genesis all the way to our people leaving the homeland and getting over here to America. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to just use the basic information from the so-called scholars that have supposedly gone back and done the research. It'll have to be refined because you never can trust your enemy to get it right, because they're always going to try to manipulate it so it'll throw you off, so you won't think that you are the chosen people. Okay, so but for right now, let's just say they got it halfway right, and we'll just use this as a basis. They're saying that the scholars have determined that based on their examination of the scriptures, that man basically started out at 4004 BC. Us, as far as Adam when he was created, 4004 BC. Okay. Now he went left there and calculated the flood, and if I remember correctly, was I think it was 2350 BC. Then he came down and had the what was it? The birth of Esau? No, it was the Tower of Babel. So you got the flood, beginning of man. Then you got the Tower of Babel, which they estimated at 2200 BC. All right. Then you got the birth of Esau and Jacob at 16. I believe it was either 1630 or 1656 BC. Esau and Jacob, and of course we know we have right here, which is Christ, the day of Christ coming on the scene. Okay, which is your 0. And we have the Assyrian captivity. Assyrian captivity, that was right about 741 BC. And then you have the Babylonian captivity, which was 539 BC. And then you have Christ coming on the scene between Christ and which they call the time of the New Testament, and the Old Testament, Malachi ending. You have 430 years, which is the Apocrypha. That's your 430 years between your Old Testament and your New Testament. Okay, so we got their estimate as the beginning of man beginning at 4004 BC. We having about 1600 years. And then, Lord, the Most High wiped out. First of all, I want to give all praises to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. We want to give honor to all the Achaim out there that are on the streets, on the highways and byways that are pushing the word, pushing the truth. And our prayer is that this truth gets out. This truth gets out to the 144, so our kingdom can come into existence. It can be brought back by the Messiah, Mashiach, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his Hebrew name is Yahushua. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to get this timeline, the general basics of the timeline, where people can understand how the two kingdoms split, which would be the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom being the North American Indians, the Aztec, the southern Indians, and the Central American Indians, which would be the northern kingdom that came over here to the Americas, what's now called the Americas, which we know as Arsareth in the Apocrypha. And so we want to get a timeline where we can understand where we all fit in this this scheme of God's Holy Bible, Holy Word, where we fit in. We want to get an understanding where we fit in what his master plan is for us. So, again, to recap, we got 4004 BC. Adam comes on the scene. That's what the scholars say. Ursher and several others. Flood hits here about 2350. Now, the reason why that's so important is because what we learned from Christianity or evolution or whatever you want to call it, they all pretty much try to say the same thing, is that it really doesn't matter where you come from because we all come from Adam. The problem with that theory is that this flood right here, this flood at 2350 BC wiped out everybody from Adam except for Noah and his 3 sons. Since that wiped out, that means that everybody came from 3 people, and that 3 people is Shem, Japheth, and Ham. Okay? So, with this flood here, let's put a star by that, but that flood, you can throw that everybody comes from Adam out the door, because the Lord wiped everybody from Adam off the face of the earth. And he basically hit a reset button and said, I'm going to reset it with 3 people, not 1 person. 3 people. Okay? Now, what everybody needs to understand is from 4004 BC, roughly, to 2350, the only people that were not of dark skin were the sons of Cain, because Cain was cursed with leprosy. All right, you can go into the scriptures and read that. We all know the scriptures, but right now for this edification, I'm just trying to get through the timeline. You can go and look up the scriptures yourself, where it says Cain was cursed with leprosy. That was the mark that was put on Cain, which is now popularized, known as the mark of Cain. All right, that mark of Cain didn't come back until after Shem's descendants arrived on the scene. Now, okay, so the flood hit 2350. After the flood, you've got Shem, Japheth, and Ham. They repopulate the earth. All right, they repopulate the earth, and that puts everybody from 2350 to 2200. That means everybody speaks the same language for about 150 years. Everybody speaking the same language. Then the Tower of Babel hits, and the Lord, the Lord's host comes down. It says, let us go down. So when everybody's thinking that, oh, well, just God himself came down. God the Father does not come down to this planet. He is too much for this planet. So he sends his Godhead, which is the Elohim. He sends his Godhead down, which is Christ and the angels. They come down and they confound everybody at the Tower of Babel. So after 150 years of speaking the same language, he confounds their language. Now, that's when everybody spreads out. Now, what you have is, you got under Shem, so everybody needs to keep this correctly. So we'll come down here and we'll put Shem, Japheth, and Ham. Okay. Now, everybody needs to make sure they have a Zondervan Bible dictionary, and make sure you go and look up Ham. Why do we look up Ham instead of Japheth? Because everybody thinks that we come from Ham because we're dark skinned. That is not correct. So if you go in here and look up Ham, it's going to tell you Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, however, not the Negroes. He became the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. Now, I'm going to go one step further and clarify that and state that that should not say not the Negroes. It should say not the Israelites. Okay? So he's got Ham as progenitor of the dark races. Progenitor of the dark races, but not the Israelites. Because everybody, see if I can find my chart. Everybody should have a chart of the 18 nations. Thank you, Miss Marshall, for these thumbtacks. Because they always come in handy. All right. So everybody knows that we've got 18 nations set up by the Most High. And everybody knows that except for the Canaanites, the descendants of Cain, everybody on the planet was dark skinned except for Naaman had leprosy, and one of the priests had a servant, and that servant tried to deceive Naaman and took his valuables. When Naaman left, Naaman dipped into the river Jordan 7 times, and his leprosy was cured. And then the priest, the prophet's servant, went after him because the priest wouldn't accept his gifts. So his servant went after him and said, "Hey, give him to me." Because of that leprosy was put on.
Elijah's servant.
Okay, Elijah's servant. So that leprosy was put on that servant. All right. So, and all of his descendants. All right. So, except for those, everybody else was dark skinned. Now, so except for people that got that curse, everybody else was dark skinned until Shem's descendant Esau came along. All right. So Esau came along in 1630. 1630. You had Esau and Jacob. So Esau and Jacob, 1630 BC, approximately, because we know that these scholars get stuff a little bit off. So approximately 1630, some say 1656, some say 1630, but we know right around there, it was before Christ. So you got Esau and Jacob. Esau comes out red, like a hairy garment. Esau comes out red. We're not going to worry about Japheth because we know Japheth was the original Greeks and they were moved out of their land when the Mesopotamian Alexander the Great, his father was, Alexander's father? Philip of Macedonia. I'm sorry, Macedonia. They came out, this is in the Apocrypha, they came out and moved when Alexander the Great went conquering, he moved everybody out of their place. Okay, so that was the reign of the Edomites that were descendants of Esau. Okay, now, everybody wants to say that it says in here, Ham became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes. We know that's Israelites, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Now, in order to justify that, you would have to go and see that Ham actually had a son named Egypt. Well, he didn't. He had a son named Mizraim. Okay. So Ham had son. One name was what is it? Phut, P-H-U-T. He had one that was Canaan, Mizraim. Okay. Let's see here. And Cush. Okay. If I remember serving correctly. None of Ham's sons was named Egypt. So we have to understand that since his son was not named Egypt, the one that acquired the land, was given the land that Egypt is in, that was called Egypt, the land's called Egypt, was Mizraim. So Mizraim, Ham had not one son named Egypt, but the land where his descendants Mizraim occupied was called Egypt because that was where bondage. Egypt means bondage, and that's where the Israelites were held in captive at Mizraim. That's why it's called Egypt. Okay, so now Egypt means bondage. Now, of the sons of, let's go over here and pick up Esau. Let's go over here and pick up Esau. Go over here and pick up Esau. Let me see you. I have a, where is that highlighter? Didn't put it in there. Didn't put it in there.
You have a light yellow marker. It'll be just like a highlighter.
Yeah, I know. But did I bring it with me? I have 1,000 things I have to bring, and I did not. It's in the car. It's in the car. Uh-oh. It's in the car. That's all right. No, it's not. It's right here in my Bible. There we go. Okay. Okay. Now, under Esau, it says, the firstborn of the twin brothers, Esau and Jacob, sons of Isaac and Rebekah. Before their birth, God had told their mother that the elder should serve the younger. Esau became a man of the fields. He apparently lived only for the present. This characteristic was demonstrated when he let Jacob have his birthright for a mess of pottage because he was hungry. At the age of 40, he married 2 Hittite women. That's in Genesis 26:34. When the time came for Isaac to give his blessing to his son, he wanted to confer it to Esau, but through trickery, that's what it claims, trickery, Jacob obtained the blessing instead. This loss grieved Esau very much. He begged for another blessing, and when he received it, he hated it because it made him the servant of his brother. He hated Jacob for cheating him and intended to kill him. When Esau saw Jacob sent away to obtain a wife from his mother's relatives, he understood that Canaanite wives did not please his father, so he went out and took for himself 2 additional wives of the Ishmaelites. Now, the Ishmaelites, of course, this happened between Shem and Isaac, because we know that under Shem we have Abraham,